Okay, so, the series Fuckfest starts chronologically with a big choice. Baptism or no baptism. Both of these options start timelines for a man named Booker DeWitt, a soldier for the 7th Cavalry Regiment of the United States Army, where he participates in the Wounded Knee Massacre of 1890 and murders a bunch of Native Americans to show his loyalty, despite being partially Native American himself. One timeline starts with Booker going through a baptism after this massacre and renaming himself Zachary Comstock, because apparently you can do that in Catholicism. Another timeline starts when Booker says fuck this and denies the baptism at the last minute, retaining his birth name. Comstock goes on to make a giant unrealistic city in the sky called Columbia, using government funding, and advertises it as a modern-day Ark. You know, cause religion. He has help from 2 brilliant scientists known as the Lutesses, and eventually makes the city happen, inviting all who would convert to a twisted version of Catholicism, where the founding fathers are figures of heaven. Super! Booker, on the other hand, spends time as a grunt mercenary for business owners and wastes his life drinking and gambling, eventually handing his daughter Anna over to some shady folks to pay off his debts. In a last-ditch effort not to be a terrible dad, he chases after his daughter and watches as a man he doesn't know take his child through a rift in the wall. Now here's where Comstock makes 2 timelines of his own, making 3 main timelines known to the game. Hope you're keeping up. In the main timeline that is mostly followed and repeated, Comstock successfully abducts Anna with the help of the Lutesses, only with her pinky being torn off from the rift closing around it, thus starting Bioshock Infinite. In the second Comstock timeline, he accidentally kills Anna when the rift closes around her neck instead. After killing Anna, Comstock orders the Lutesses to send him through a rift to an underwater city called Rapture, far in the future of 1949, and recluses himself, becoming a private investigator for the citizens under his original name, Booker DeWitt. We'll come back to this Rapture Comstock later, just keep this in mind. Anna, in the timeline where she doesn't die, is renamed Elizabeth, branded as the Lamb of Columbia. She is locked in a tower because Comstock's wife can't believe in science and will not raise her. So Anna, now Elizabeth, is raised by a mechanical guard bird named Songbird until adulthood. As this is all happening, Lady Comstock is murdered by her husband, and he shifts the blame to her handmaiden, Daisy Fitzroy, because she's black. Daisy takes refuge in an immigrant sector called Finkton and builds a resistance called the Vox Populi to both take revenge on Comstock and to shut down the very blatantly obvious white supremacy in Columbia, because it's the late 1890s and racist slave labor is still a thing. With Booker, there's just drinking, depression, and sorrow. Fast forward through all the political crap to 1912, and Booker finally makes his way to Columbia, citing a message twisted from his memories: give us the girl and wipe away the debt. He is given instructions by 2 figures, later revealed to be the Lutesses, and goes to the city in the skies to kidnap Elizabeth. However, the Lutesses set Booker up to be listed as a Colombian-known terrorist called the False Shepherd for Comstock, and before Booker rightfully helps a biracial couple escape a public torture, Booker is forced to combat the might of Columbia's police force as he makes his way towards Elizabeth's tower. He successfully breaks Elizabeth out of the tower and brings her to an airship, lying to her about bringing her to Paris and instead setting course for New York to deliver Elizabeth to his debtors. Elizabeth knocks him out, but the airship is invaded by Vox Populi. Elizabeth escapes, and Booker is caught, and forced to work with the Vox Populi in exchange for the ship's return. He finds Elizabeth, and both of them go to honor the agreement, find a weaponsmith named Chen Lin in Jeremiah Fink's worker district, and deliver weapons to the Vox Populi. Of course, Fink knows about Booker and makes him go through a heavy gauntlet for a job position as chief of security. Booker refuses and finds Chen Lin slaughtered by Fink's men. Instead of just reporting to Daisy what happened, Elizabeth rips a tear into another reality where Chen Lin isn't dead, hoping to go through with the deal there, when it wouldn't have mattered because the deal wasn't made in that reality. Everything has changed with the Vox Populi gaining momentum in Finkton. However, in this timeline, Chenlin's production machines were taken. Repeat the verse, same as the first. Elizabeth takes them to a timeline where Chen-Lin has his machines, and both Booker and Elizabeth wind up in a timeline where the Vox have fully gained the advantage in the rebellion with the help of their timeline's Booker. Yep, reality travel is fucked. Daisy, in this timeline, meets the Lutesses and learns that she has to be the catalyst for Elizabeth to set things properly in motion by sacrificing herself. Daisy reluctantly agrees and forces Elizabeth to kill her, using Fink's son as a hostage. Booker and Elizabeth then agree to stop Comstock, fighting through hordes of Vox and Columbia police to Comstock's home. However, Songbird stops and almost kills Booker, forcing Elizabeth to trade herself for his safety. She is taken to be mentally broken by Comstock, and Booker runs unknowingly into another rift, sending him forward to where Elizabeth succeeds Comstock and starts a war with the land below. Elizabeth, now old and weary, takes Booker up, gives him some advice for past Elizabeth, and sends him right back to when she was taken. Booker breaks Elizabeth out of Comstock's imprisonment and promises to kill Comstock for her, leading them both to hunt him down. On the way, they find out that the tower Elizabeth was trapped in was also a siphon, draining her of her terror-creating abilities, which formed from her jumping from one timeline to another. After breaking Comstock's head against a bird bath, Booker and Elizabeth go head-to-head against the crazed Vox Populi, using Songbird to bring them down and destroy the siphon. Upon the tower's decimation, Elizabeth unlocks the full potential of her powers. Elizabeth transports Booker and herself into a limbo rift in time, where she reveals that she can see all of the timelines and confirms that Booker has to die before the baptism is made to fix everything. Booker agrees, is drowned by a small group of Elizabeths, and upon his death, all of the girls vanish, having never been born. Now, normally, this would have been the logical end, but nope! Apparently, one more Comstock remains even after killing Booker at the source of the timeline split. Remember the Comstock that killed Anna? Yep, he's somehow still around thanks to the Lutece's rifts, and Elizabeth, not dead yet and now able to travel through all timelines, forms herself in Comstock's final timeline to finish the job. Now comes Rapture, a city opposite of Columbia that lies under the Atlantic Ocean in a strange social system where the government and religion can fuck off. Andrew Ryan, the creator of Rapture, built the city as a way to cultivate a society free of government censorship and morality. In 1945, Rapture was built and accepted a society beneath the Atlantic Ocean. As this was happening, a man named Frank Gorland wins ownership of a bar and unwillingly becomes an informant for a man looking into Rapture. When Gorland learns of a man named Frank Fontaine, the owner of a fishing business stocking food for Rapture workers, he kills Fontaine and takes his name to infiltrate Rapture on his own. Frank builds a relationship with Andrew, and together they thrive in Rapture both above and below the table. With the help of the geneticist Dr. Bridget Tenenbaum, funded by Frank, a powerful DNA-altering energy called Adam is founded, and soon multiple serums called plasmids began to circulate Rapture society to give humans superpowers. To mass-produce Adam, Tenenbaum began to research and produce Little Sisters, an army of genetically altered, orphaned, or kidnapped girls able to carry and cultivate Adam from the bodies of the dead and within themselves. At the same time, a scientist named Su Chong creates beings called Big Daddies, large beings built as maintenance workers and protectors of the Little Sisters. See, Adam was found to be extremely addicting and came with physical and mental side effects. Addicts began to hunt and kill Little Sisters for their Adam, slowly causing Rapture to be divided and certain areas to be quarantined off. Not that Adam was the only thing breaking the city of Rapture apart. As citizens began to crave the surface and grow collectively unwell mentally without sunlight, Andrew Ryan invited psychiatrist Sophia Lamb to find a way to ease citizen worry, without realizing her own agenda for Rapture. With me so far? Lots of players, I know, but at least it's easier than Kingdom Hearts, right? Or is it? Moving on, Sophia Lamb starts using her therapy to build a cult, which causes her to be arrested. Sophia leaves behind her daughter, Eleanor Lamb, with one of Sophia's followers, and uses her time in jail to build even more of a following with other prisoners. Eleanor, in the meantime, is abducted and turned into a little sister. In achievement, she is the first to successfully bond with a big daddy named Subject Delta, and spends her time as a little sister at his side. Delta, now bonded with Eleanor, is physically and mentally bound to protect her no matter what, and will die without constant contact with her. This is important later. In the swell of Rapture before the major falling out, Elizabeth learns about Comstock's life beneath the water. Comstock adopted a little girl named Sally, only to lose her when she accompanied him to a gambling ring. While Comstock was told Sally was killed, Sally was actually abducted and turned into a little sister. With this information, Elizabeth hires an unaware Comstock to find Sally, leading him deep into a quarantine area of Rapture where he is confronted for his actions against Elizabeth and killed by the Big Daddy charged with Sally. As this is happening, Rapture is having a fallout. Frank Fontaine starts up a civil war with Andrew Ryan. As Su Chong and Tenenbaum are under his funding, Frank forces them to help build and acquire an ace in the hole, hopeful to eventually win the war. What is the ace in the hole? An embryo. What? Basically, Andrew Ryan got his mistress pregnant, and the mistress sold her embryo to Tenenbaum to take care of. Tenenbaum and Su Chong raise the child, named Jack, and implement genetic mind control to be utilized later in life. At the climax of the Rapture Civil War, Frank Fontaine creates a fake identity called Atlas and officially moves to the Atlas name after Frank Fontaine is killed in a final shootout. Jack, at the age of 2 and in response to this move, is smuggled out of Rapture and is raised on the surface with no memory of what happened or what will happen in the future. However, there's one issue left for Frank, now Atlas, to use his ace. The mind control has an activation code, and after the shootout, Tenenbaum goes into hiding and Su Chong is taken under Andrew's protection, leaving Atlas with no code to use. Poor Frank, right? Wrong. Enter Elizabeth. After Comstock is killed, Elizabeth sees herself basking in Paris, only to realize it was a fever dream. She wakes up back in Rapture and finds her dead body, killed by the same Big Daddy that killed Comstock. You see, she too had to die in order to set things right. Seeing this death suddenly cuts off her rift-traveling ability and traps her final life in Rapture's watery depths. No more reality hopping from here on in. Linear story for the win, ladies, gents, and nuns. Maybe. Anyway, she makes her way into Frank's territory where she is haunted by an illusionary hallucination of Booker. Sally, the girl she used to trap Comstock, is captured by Frank, and Elizabeth is forced to help him obtain the code for his ace in exchange for Sally's safety. Elizabeth makes her way through Rapture to Suchong's lab, where she learns that Suchong was the inspiration of vigor abilities in Columbia, because rifts are fucky, and he helped develop bond imprinting not only for the Big Daddies, but second-handedly inspired imprinting Songbird to her when she was trapped in her tower. Mind blown. She learns Suchong's code as "Would you kindly," and before she hands it off to Frank, gets a final vision of the timeline, seeing the result of Frank's ace and Sally's eventual freedom. She turns the code in, knowing she would be killed afterward, and smiles before being killed by Frank and his men, thus ending the Elizabeth travel cycle and setting the story on a solid one-timeline course. Or is it? Time goes forward to 1958, where Subject Delta is following Eleanor around during New Year's Eve. She gets into trouble, and the Splicers, causing trouble, throw a mind-controlling plasmid at Delta. We turn around and suddenly see Sophia Lamb approach Delta. Remember her? Yeah, she got out of jail and hunted down Eleanor, finding her as a little sister. Sophia commands Delta to shoot himself in the head, hoping to break the bond between Delta and Eleanor to reclaim her daughter. So much for Delta. For now. 2 years later in 1960, and Jack is found flying over the Atlantic for some reason. The only thing with him is a birthday present and a message that says, "Would you kindly?" The plane crashes and Jack finds himself entering a lighthouse and submerging himself into a bathysphere, taking him to Rapture. There, he listens to the directions of a man named Atlas, who is totally Frank Fontaine, wink wink, instructing him to break through Rapture and find Andrew Ryan. Being that Jack has Andrew's genetic code, everything unlocks for him, despite places being shut down. Tenenbaum, coming out of hiding, begs Jack to save the little sisters on the way. Here is where two new timelines form. As Jack hunts for Andrew Ryan, he can either save the little sisters with a genetic power given to him by Tenenbaum, releasing them from their mutation, or harvest the atom inside of the little sisters to become stronger. Either way, the little sisters are released from their torture. Jack finds Andrew Ryan and is forced to kill him with the "Would you kindly" mind control command. Upon Andrew's death, Frank tries to take over Rapture and tries to kill Jack with a secondary code, code Yellow, to stop his heart. But since Frank's a fucking idiot and the heart doesn't actually 100% listen to the brain because the heart is an organ that automatically keeps the body alive, Jack continues to live and thus begins to hunt down Frank instead. Jack finds a cure for the mind control, and Tenenbaum leads him to Frank, issuing an epic boss battle between Jack and a really roided up Frank Fontaine, who basically injected himself with a fuck ton of atom. Jack wins, the little sisters deal the final blows on Frank, and the ending changes on whether or not you were addicted to the little sisters. If you harvested them, Jack takes over Rapture and becomes commander of the Splicers. This ending sucks and no one really considers it canon, but hey sadist, you get an ending made for you. Have a cookie. In the ending many consider to be canon, Jack saves all the little sisters, takes them up back to the surface, and raises them in surface society, becoming a hero and a father to all of them. But we're not done! After the fall of Frank and Andrew, Sophia takes up the challenge of controlling Rapture. Sophia restarted the Little Sister project for cult reasons, forcing Tenenbaum to return in an attempt to stop it. When Little Sisters become older, Sophia forces them to become Big Sisters, basically Big Daddies with more maneuverability. With these Big Sisters, Sophia continued to kidnap more little girls from Rapture and from the surface to convert into Little Sisters for a much bigger plan. Years have gone by, with Eleanor becoming a teenager in 1968. She gains control over the Little Sisters and guides them to revive Subject Delta using a Vita Chamber, because fuck reality at this point. Since Delta is still bonded with Eleanor, Delta makes his way through Rapture to try and find her, learning that Sophia is using Adam to transform Eleanor into a perfect altruist. Basically a puppet for Sophia's will. Don't think too hard about it, there is nothing truly philosophical here. On the way, he meets the people involved with Eleanor and Sophia and has the choice to kill them or spare them. He also has the same choice Jack had with the little sisters he meets: harvest them or save them. All of these choices matter, as 3 potential timelines open up based on what Delta does. He finally makes it to Eleanor's imprisonment, where Sophia smothers her with a pillow, stopping her heart just long enough to sever the bond between Eleanor and Delta, knocking him out. However, when revived, Eleanor uses the little sisters again to resuscitate Delta and gain a big sister suit of her own to escape with him. They make their way towards an escape pod in the main chamber hub, fighting Sophia's followers along the way, but wind up face to face with a bunch of explosions, meant as a last resort to stop Eleanor and Delta from escaping. Eleanor is able to teleport out of danger, but Delta gets blasted out of the hub and onto the outside while the interior starts to fill with water. Now here is where the choices Delta made begin to emerge. If Delta was a big shithead and harvested the little sisters, as well as killed everyone in his path, then Eleanor will make sure Sophia drowns in the hub and eventually will turn on Delta, using a little sister needle to take his essence and absorb it into herself. She then goes on to prophesize her powerful rule over the broken Rapture below. If Delta played the good guy and saved all of the little sisters as well as the non-splicers he met on the way, Eleanor lets Sophia live, but still absorbs Delta's essence to preserve him after his death within herself. The little sisters have a symbolic moment with Eleanor as she drops a toy Big Daddy into the ocean. We can only assume she helps Rapture in a good way or just does a jack and become a mother figure for the little sisters returning to the surface. It's unclear. However, and this is the big weird one, if Delta played the middleman with the little sisters, then Delta is given a choice. Either let Eleanor absorb his essence, which turns to the bad end, or stop Eleanor from absorbing him at all, letting him die naturally and leaving Eleanor all alone. And y'all thought fucking Kingdom Hearts was complicated. What the fuck's wrong with y'all?